There are gods who have come to this earth to give us a taste of what is possible, but now it's time to break free and make it possible in VR. Welcome to VMX, the first virtual reality BMX game. I'm aiming to make a biking game that's as realistically controlled as possible, making exceptions where necessary. Sorry people with feet trackers. The primary focus is intuitive handling for doing movements and tricks. It needs to have a low skill floor for casual play, but also a high skill ceiling so you can have competitive gameplay while doing tricks. The player needs to feel like a badass while also leveraging all that's possible in VR to sell the experience. You are doing the tricks, not just clicking buttons. I've been working on this project for a few months. Let me show you the progress that I've made recently. I have a devlog with my first prototype on my personal channel. If you're curious about that, you can see how it all started out. But the TLDR is that I heavily modified the Unreal Vehicle template to make a stable bike that handles jumps well. I also developed a novel gestural control system for turning and doing air controls. One of the comments I've received about my demo footage was concerns about nausea. This is reasonable given that most games stray away from even letting the player rotate, but there are some by default design features that I've included to help reduce this. First, when you're doing a flip, this gesture requires you to move your head with the motion. This stimulates your vestibular system, which is a tube of fluid in your ear which moves with motion, kind of like a bubble in a level. By moving your head with the motion, even a little, you don't get the same effect as if the ground was moving underneath you in a game. Additionally, the player usually has the bike and hands in their reference frame on screen, which helps you understand what is moving and what isn't. I'm continuously looking into this problem with solutions that handle the problem naturally. So far though, if you have some experience in VR, it's actually relatively safe feeling, although it is difficult to convey from the footage alone. The most obvious difference to start off with is graphics. I previously had a lot of flat and simple models, but I dropped some Satoshis and got some high quality assets outsourced for the beginning of our player, the bike, and the world. There are a lot of articulating parts, hand animations, and detailed textures being added. I started with an indoor park that has an industrial feel, but I'll add more elements to bring out its life. Currently, it's there to try transferring from one surface to another to test out all the systems. The long-term plan is to create different kinds of parks with different aspects, like an outdoor cement park, a dirt pump track, and a BMX street environment. But back to the bike systems. The bike control systems are starting to feel amazing. Previously, I had some basic flips and spins and some ground controls, but now I've been focusing on ensuring that you can do what's most important in BMX, tricks. Backflips and spins existed, but now I've made it more realistic by having you push your rotation when you leave the ramp instead of just turning randomly while you're in the air. This made it easier to do tricks in the air once you already started a rotation. I've added a few other tricks which require a lot more work than is obvious. Bar maneuvers like spins and X-up are now possible, as well as frame maneuvers like tailwhips and tabletops. Bar maneuvers are based on you actually moving the bar, obviously, and this is relatively straightforward, but an actual real problem I had while developing this was predicting where your hand should be when you let go of the bar. This sounds kind of like a trivial problem, but the player's hands are on a fake handlebar, which lets the player not have to hold their hands exactly where the bar is. But I need both hands for this. When you're doing a bar spin, you let go of your hands on the handlebar. So in this case, where I only have one hand, I have to use the center of the bike and this fake handlebar that I have, make a new handlebar, offset it from the fake handlebar, and then blend them back together. This is an example of something that just doesn't seem like it would be there, but it's pretty much the crux of every gestural problem. Designing the Tailwhip was even more complicated, requiring me to write a continuous gesture system, as well as make the bike reparent itself on the fly so it follows your hand instead of on the ground. The tailwhip motion is like this in the air, where you throw the frame around the bike. That continuous gesture system detects if your hands are moving in a way that will be a circle based on incomplete information. It's probably some of the most complicated math I've ever written. Although tricks exist, I need a scoring system, which is part of the next phase of development, which I'll get into more later. But as I add to the list of tricks, more things become possible, and the game will have a lot more options. Once I get the scoring system in, I can easily begin to make game modes like playing horse, or bike in this case, or even a simple timed leaderboard. I started toying with hand animations and interactable objects. I wrote a custom system for gripping and interacting with objects in different ways. I've made some toys like a spray paint can, a whiteboard, and a eraser. I made these because I'm thinking about customization early on in this project. It's important to find a way to express yourself in the game and make things your own. The whiteboard seemed to be the simplest way to test user-generated content. You have drawing, you have erasing, you also have saving the files onto the disk. The spray paint can can't do much right now, but I plan on using it in the bike customization system. I'll expand and improve on this as I start filling up the skate park, but this was just a way to set up the basics while I was rewriting the hands anyways, now that I have multiple headsets to develop the game on. Another element that is subtle but starts to bring out the life of the game is sound effects. I've added a few sound effects to start, playing with different tire noises for different materials. a wind effect for when you move fast, clicking for when the hub spins, and chain noises for when the player pedals. Getting sound effects has been actually quite tough, as I actually haven't found a good source, but as I find new ones and replace old ones, I'm sure it will feel much more real. The last big leg of this update was starting to write stabilizing and prediction code, so that way when you do a trick, you land. This needs to be more sophisticated in the future, but right now there's 3 main goals. First is sticking to the ramp, because without it, sometimes you land on top, or you fall because the physics gives you a random direction. Second is landing correctly on curves. If you don't, you either crash because your trick wasn't perfect, or you bounce and lose a lot of speed, which just isn't fun. Lastly, with the new input, you can't rotate freely in the air, so this helps you land after you start a trick. I'll be adding more code like this because it makes you feel like you're better at the game, but holy shit is it complicated. Less complicated, less cool, but important for the future with developing things like menus, save system, and spectator cams. When developing, I'm tinkering with a lot of settings to find out what feels right, so I started developing menus to adjust the value in game, as well as save them, so that way you're not resetting these values each time you play. Additionally, all the footage you've seen today is through spectator cams, which looks a lot better than what it was on my last video. On my previous video, you missed a lot of the action. It was always off-centered to the left eye, and additionally very shaky. I think I've gotten rid of most of it, and the footage looks so much better for it. What's next though? Game modes, interactions, bike and outfit customization, and most importantly of all, multiplayer. I want this game to be the ultimate social experience where you're able to hang out with your friends, challenge them to a game of bike, find out who can pull the most impressive combo, or simply just chill on the side watching other people ride. This game is something new and becoming something very fast. Leave a like if you enjoyed what I put to code, and comment if you have ideas for interactions and customizations. Most importantly, break free.